ما تريد.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, it's going to be an economic file. We're going to be looking at the Egyptian economy in light of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi actually inaugurating mega projects in Damietta Governorate. We're also going to be looking at the statements the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt saying that the financial crisis is over. There will be an economic boom in 2018. We're going to be looking at the near future and also the national mega projects taking place in Damietta. But first off, we're going to take a look at this report regarding Damietta Governorate, the historical background of it, and we'll be right back with our distinguished guests.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi inaugurated on Tuesday a number of development and services projects in Damietta Governorate. The projects included a furniture city, a number of hospitals, as well as new housing units in Dar el-Masr project. The president was accompanied by Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and a number of ministers and high-ranking officials. Speaking in the ceremony, Sisi ordered a speedy conclusion of the national projects being carried out and stressed on the importance to end all kinds of aggression on state land by the end of the year, saying that no one is above the law. On the health sector, President Sisi asked the Minister of Health to conclude the treatment of all hepatitis C patients within a year. The head of state gave his instructions for setting the standards for medical training. Meanwhile, Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Ahmed said millions of hepatitis C patients were treated at a cost of 3 billion Egyptian pounds. On the housing sector, the president said that those who made full payment for their housing units should receive their units within 18 months. The president said that improving the conditions for citizens living in unofficial settlements is a priority. During the ceremony, a documentary entitled For Better Future was shown. It demonstrated a number of developmental projects in all fields, including health, housing, and services. The projects were established in all governorates. He said that special committees formed from the members of the Administrative Authority and the Armed Forces engineers audited more than 1,705 projects carried out at a cost of 285 billion Egyptian pounds. Arfan noted that the authority had approved 140 projects from 179 projects audited, paving the way for their inauguration by the president. The rest of the projects are to be inaugurated after dealing with a number of remarks. About 1,526 projects are also to be inaugurated by the ministers and governors in the near future. Arfan said that 16 projects were inaugurated on Tuesday at a cost of 4.9 billion Egyptian pounds, including 6 projects carried out by the armed forces in the fields of industry and health at a cost of 1.7 billion Egyptian pounds, 7 projects for the Ministry of Health carried out at a cost of 488 million Egyptian pounds, and 3 projects for the Ministry of Housing and Utilities carried out at a cost of 2.7 billion Egyptian pounds. As for the projects carried out by the armed forces, Arfan said the Damietta Furniture City is among projects inaugurated on Tuesday. He said the governorate sets an example in eliminating unemployment before the year 2011. However, he added that while the furniture industry is a heritage craft, it faced many challenges, prompting the state to intervene to protect the industry.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. Explore Egypt. to Alexandria, Sharm el-Sheikh to Hurghada. Try to discern the mystery of the Sphinx. Meditate on the symmetry of the pyramids. Explore incredible marine life in Marsa Alam. Safaris into the desert of South Sinai. Relax with a view of the Nile. Explore Egypt on Nile TV International.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm starting off our discussion right away with our distinguished guest, Dr. Tariq Khalil, the president of the Nile University and founder of the International Association for Management of Technology. Dr. Khalil, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
Dr. Khalil, first of all, now President Sisi inaugurated today many important projects in Damietta Governorate. What is the significance of these projects, especially in Damietta Governorate? We know the Governorate is very well known for the furniture industry, but what is the significance of this inauguration?
This is really significant because what the economy needs are productive enterprises, productive projects. And Damietta is well known for its crafts of furniture. It has been historically, and it has many, many qualified people that actually entered the profession year after year and generation after generation, that they built certain competence in here. So there is an inherent significant competitive advantage for the furniture industry in that region. And now by inaugurating the furniture city, it provides a home for many of those craftsmen to actually find the proper foundation for industry, as well as hopefully that can generate products for exports.
Yes.
Because what we need is to export a lot of the products, or at least not import. So it's either import replacement or export expansion. So in order to be able to export, you need a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage in Damietta is well known, and they have been successful actually in exporting to many countries in the world. They have been very successful in Africa, and they have been successful also in the West, as a matter of fact, which is one of the few industries that have penetrated with quality some of the very famous stores in the West. So by providing the foundation, providing the support, providing the know-how, providing the infrastructure and the environment that can lead to this is very important for the economy. And I hope that this is the foundation of many projects to come, because if we can do the same, like what is happening in Damietta right now with the furniture city, if we can duplicate it in various other governorates, with each government finding out what its competitive advantage is, and building on that competitive advantage in order to be able to replace import products and to export, hopefully in the future, if the quality is worked out, then that is going to make a major dent in the economic conditions that we have right now.
Yes. Well, Dr. Khalil, you pointed out that this will definitely be very beneficial for the economy, especially the economy of Damietta Governorate. But how can it actually spill over? How can it actually be beneficial for the whole of the Egyptian economy? Because we can't just depend on exporting furniture from one governorate.
That's the point I was trying to make. You really create clusters of excellence. So Damietta is a cluster of excellence in furniture. You're going to create another cluster of excellence, let's say, in Mansoura. Another cluster of excellence maybe in Alexandria. Another cluster of excellence in Asyut. Another one in Aswan. Another one in Halayb and Shalatin. So, for example, if you look at Damietta with the cluster of excellence in furniture, you can create a cluster of excellence in Halayb and Shalatin, in biomedical products, in herbs and some of the health replacement products. You can create something in Aswan that is similar. So each one of those clusters can become a magnet for people in the region to actually work and generate income and replace imported products as well as to export in that region. But however, the Damietta project, for example, has also spillovers. So the furniture industry in itself depends on many other components. In other words, you're going to need certain supplemental components that can be produced either in Damietta itself or in somewhere else that has the competitive advantage for that. So it's not only furniture by itself, but furniture and everything that goes around it. So there will be needs for types of coverages, there will be needs for metals, there will be needs for
transportation,
for a whole bunch of other activities that will circle around this one. Plus, obviously, the focus on the small and medium enterprises will create many jobs for the region. So it's a job creation, it's fighting the unemployment problem, but in the meantime, and that's what I would hope, is besides some of those small industries that we are trying to promote, is that we also figure out a way to consolidate the efforts of many of these people into some larger mass production industries that can actually be exported to many, many countries around the world. For example, some countries have been very successful with this, such as Turkey, for example, has been successful with that. Italy has been successful with that. Some other countries, Sweden has been successful with that. But Damietta has inherited advantage, and I think we can capitalize on that.
Yes.
And that's the significance of this particular project as the first one to be inaugurated with this type of thinking in mind.
Dr. Khalil, as you've mentioned, this governorate really thrives on inheriting this, this craft, this industry from one generation to the next. Now, with the government actually inaugurating more projects in this sector, which means there will be some sort of an expansion, more job opportunities. Do you feel, because they've always been quite self-sufficient and the people from the governorate work from there, do you see other people moving from other governorates, getting some training there in training centers, and then really be part of the expansion?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the advantages are many, but one of the important things of the focus in here is not only to depend on the existing craftsmen in the industry, but to elevate the level of performance of the industry in many ways, particularly the quality issues. Because the quality, if you don't have quality product, you cannot compete in a global marketplace. And you are competing in a global marketplace. If you're talking about exporting, we have very good markets to export to. We have the Arab world, we have Africa, and then we have the entire world behind that. But we are also competing with many other industries and many other countries. So if we really are going to be exporting, then we have to elevate the level of quality of the product. Now, that requires training, that requires certain quality standards, that requires certain labs for certification. So the existence of that cluster with some good infrastructure and with some good scientific involvement and training activities can elevate the industry to a much higher level that you really can compete globally.
Yes. Dr. Khalil, you said that the government should work on having really different clusters around the country, focusing on, for instance, Damietta for the furniture industry, maybe focusing on other governorates for tourism, for the fishing industry, maritime activities. Which governorates should be next on the list for the government as you see it?
Well, there are so many. As a matter of fact, and I'm hoping that this would happen, and we have been, as a matter of fact, with some of my PhD students and some of the people working with me, we have been working on projects to advocate the concepts of clusters and industry and productive enterprises in various governorates, and each government has to conduct its own internal evaluation, internal audit of its core competencies that exist in the governorate. For example, if you're talking about the Red Sea governorates, obviously you can imagine that tourism is going to be an advantage, a competitive advantage. If you talk about Aswan, for example, it could be some of the plants and some of the agricultural areas and dates and few other things that can, and those are important products if the quality and the processing of those products is done well, they can compete, and they can compete very well in a global marketplace. If you're talking about Asyut, it could be different issue. So what I'm advocating, I think, and trying to push for quite a bit, is that each governorate has to conduct its own core competency capabilities in order to build on that and create the cluster similar to Damietta. Damietta is very clear case, and that's why I'm saying it's a good start, and I hope that this start would permeate and actually would spread across the country.
Yes. Well, Doctor, now there is a question of, now, the people of Damietta have been in this sector, in this industry for years. Some people say, well, if it isn't broken, why fix it? And at the same time, a lot of people are saying, well, if there is an expansion and the government can actually help expand it, well, why not? Now, how can the government find the balance of keeping the people happy with their already existing industry without getting them involved in logistics and governmental bureaucracies and all of that?
You see what you're saying in here, that's the old type of thinking. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, the new thinking, which is more consistent with innovation, because you compete with innovation. If it ain't broken, break it and fix it better. So it's always good to restart, to re-engineer the whole concept again, because the industry is moving much faster than the traditional types of industries. So we might be good in some of the traditional industries, but time passes and people leapfrog our capabilities, and with innovation they can move ahead. So you have to consistently and continuously work on improvement, on innovation, on quality, on productivity, in order to be able to compete globally. And you cannot do this without a scientific approach, without good training of employees, without good design systems, and good designers, both creative people, innovative people, and with the most up-to-date technologies associated with this. Now, with the furniture industry that existed in Damietta, unfortunately, there has been several problems that existed before. Some of these problems are health problems associated with some of the materials that are being used for the furniture industry. And lots of the population has been exposed to it.
Yes.
So from a health and safety point of view, the new facilities will actually ameliorate or remove those issues, and certainly will be more hygienically oriented and more up to date.
Yes. Well, now that you've mentioned the health problems that existed in Damietta Governorate, the President also inaugurated in Damietta many new hospitals and new housing units in Dar Masr. Now, how significant is that for the raising the standard of living of the citizens of Damietta?
From what I saw in the reports today, and I haven't looked at all the details yet, some of the health facilities that were inaugurated address the problem of hepatitis C, which is a huge problem in Egypt, obviously.
Yes.
And Egypt has been extremely successful in fighting it. So if some of the new hospitals can work on eradicate some of these health issues that exist in the population, that will lead to improved conditions, improved health, more productivity, and certainly a more healthy population. So going hand in hand, working on production on one side, and working on health issues, and trying to figure out how to deal with the existing problems and move forward to have a healthy population are extremely significant.
Yes. Well, talking about moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt has stated that the financial crisis is almost over and there will be an economic boom in 2018. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
The governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, Amir, said the financial crisis is over and 2018 will see a boom, pointing out that $46 billion has flown into the Egyptian market in the past 6 months, including $8 billion in investments from the top 150 world funds, $23 billion attracted by the banking system in Egypt, and $15 billion from international financial institutions. Amir said in a press conference at the cabinet that the current foreign reserves can cover the needs of the country for over 7 months, stressing there are no problems in foreign exchange and the world's largest investment funds have injected funds into Egypt. He said Egypt does not need to increase reserves, adding the banking system controls foreign exchange in Egypt and the economic sector can operate in a respectful manner. Amir described the exchange rate as a thermometer for the performance of Egypt's economy. Pointed out the banking system is financing large projects, including £500 billion desalination projects. The balance of payments is facing a $20 billion deficit last year, noting that next year the deficit will be back to 2010 rates equal to $4 billion. Amir pointed out the exchange rates have contributed to the improvement of some economic conditions, such as the decrease in imports in March and the increase in domestic production. He also said Egyptian factories have become competitive in the Gulf region, stressing that the growth of national output in Egypt has exceeded the year before, which reflects foreign companies' confidence in Egypt's economy.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV.
Explore Egypt.
From Cairo to Alexandria, Sharm el-Sheikh to Hurghada. Try to discern the mystery of the Sphinx. Meditate on the symmetry of the pyramids. Explore incredible marine life in Marsa Alam. Safaris into the desert of South Sinai. Relax with a view of the Nile. Explore Egypt on Nile TV International.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're joined also by Dr. Muhammad Al-Halim, the political analyst. Dr. Al-Halim, thank you very much for joining us. Now, Doctor, the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt has stated that the financial crisis is over and in 2018 there will be an economic boom. How realistic is this statement? Should the Egyptian people be very optimistic for next year? Should we be cautious? What is your sentiment regarding this statement?
Well, I think the second part of your own sentence seems to be quite very much adequate, very much suitable. That would have to be a bit cautious, actually. So long as, you know, the maximizations of all these prices during the course of the previous 2 months, actually, would give us the impression that we would have to be a bit cautious. We had to be not very much sentimental, not very much optimistic about, you know, any degradation of the sort of the prices of the items, of merchandised items in the due course of time. But in the meantime, well, all I can really say is that Dr. Tariq Amir is quite optimistic and is quite talking from what you might call a massive amount of experience about the liberalization of the Egyptian pound and the sort of the changes that did occur during the course of the previous 4 months, actually. Well, all I can really say is the fact that it's much better rather than before. It's a sort of a step that should have been taken about 20 years ago. But the problem arises, you know, whenever you really find that people would lose patience, actually, to a greater extent. They are not very much optimistic about a prosperous future, about a minimization in the sorts of the prices, actually, particularly with the advent and the coming and so near coming, actually, of Ramadan, of the feast, and, you know, I mean, the season of the universities and the schools. The moderate and, you know, I mean, the ordinary mediocre and the standard of Egyptian citizen gives us the impression that he's quite worried, he's quite cautious and quite not very much susceptible actually to the validity of that sort of statement. The fact that I think that we'd have to be very much cautious about any sort of sentimental aspects of optimistic attitude towards, you know, any sort of minimization of prices. Hopefully that it is going to be as much as it is, actually. The prices, whenever they would seem to be quite very much fixed to the status quo, to the status that we have reached to, would give us, you know, I mean, some signs of good glimpsing and good optimistic future, actually. But the problem arises, I think, and I would really endorse the fact that people during the course of the next months, seventh, you know, are quite very much susceptible, are very much worried about you know, I mean, the, you know, I mean, maximization of the prices of fuel, of a large number of other items. That's why they are waiting with a great deal of cautiousness, actually. So I think the governmental authorities, as much as Dr. Tariq Amir, would have to be very much realistic, very much, you know, I mean, putting the ordinary citizen on the right, realistic road, on the even path of trying to cope with the, you know, the future status quo that will seem to be quite in less than a couple of months or so.
Yes. Well, Dr. Khalil, now, last year, the balance of payments showed a $20 billion deficit in our budget. Now they're talking about getting back to the 2010 figures of actually having only $4 billion deficit. Now, how realistic is that? The governor of the Central Bank of Egypt said that over the past 6 months, about $46 billion have flown into the Egyptian market. Now, we've been signing a lot of economic agreements from different financial institutions, different governments all over the world. Is that why we will probably have a less of a budget? Does that mean a better economy? Is the money going to the right places, being invested in the right projects?
The issue is much more complicated than this, unfortunately. It seems to me what he was talking about is that hopefully the worst is behind us. We had to swallow a very, very bitter pill over the past year and so on. And usually when you have those drastic measures at the beginning, usually you would have the major upswing in the inflation and in the hardships that exist. So this year has been a very rough year, as was mentioned in here before. Indeed, and people are very skeptical about it to a great extent, because it has been a rough year for the economy. Hopefully, if things can start stabilizing a little more, then we are not going to see the same figures for inflation and other things and deficits in the future. However, I go back to what I said earlier. That is not going to improve unless we improve our production capabilities. If we don't produce, if we don't work hard to replace imports and start exporting, you are not going to have the type of economy that will stabilize in the future, and you're not going to see the prices go down. The problem is that we are borrowing a lot of money. So there is indeed a lot of inflow of money into the country right now, and the reserve has gone up significantly over the past several months and so on. However, all of that is borrowed money that has to be paid, and probably paid with interest. So the load on the economy is going to be quite significant. Nothing is going to improve the economy if we don't produce.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Abdul-Halim, now the government has embarked over the past few years on many national mega projects. Started off with the expansion of the Suez Canal, the cultivation of fidans around Egypt, also the electricity plants, the government-to-government agreements with countries such as China and Russia and Germany and France. So, and recently today, the President also inaugurated projects in Damietta. Now, do you feel that this has been the right way to actually strengthen the Egyptian economy and plant a seed for a better economic fruit in the future? Do you feel that this was the right way? Did it get the results that we were hoping for, or not yet?
Yeah, of course, it seems to be quite the right time, actually, and the right decision to be taken within, very much crucial moments in the history of Egypt. But, it should have been endorsed since quite a long period of time, as I've just mentioned before. The fact that, the inflation and the sort of the maximization of the prices is one of the everyday tussles, one of the problematic situations that would face, actually, the Egyptian ordinary citizen on a daily basis, actually. And as such, the governmental distinguished authority, actually, would take every now and again and seize the chance, actually, of trying to implant a new factory, to initiate a new, investments. And, well, don't forget the fact that during the previous 3 months, actually, we've had 3 youth conferences, actually, that turned out to be very much successful. The first that was held actually in Sharm el-Sheikh, followed by, Aswan, and the third that was very much actually successful one indeed, in Ismailia. And all of these 3 world youth conferences actually would establish new promotions and new issues and new prospects for a good future actually for all those unemployed youngsters actually. Those people who would seem to be quite, for a long period of time, deprived of the right simple chance of their own, asking for a new job. So these new prospects on the part of the governmental distinguished authority actually not only would turn, the Egyptian future into a bit prosperous stance, actually, in much the same way, actually, that it will pave the way for those people, as I've just mentioned, who had been deprived for quite a long time of, of finding suitable chances to find a job, to marry, and to initiate and integrate, and to fill the void of their own emptiness of their own everyday life, just by way also of minimizing the illegal immigration and of minimizing the recourse of the crimes, actually, because we would have to be very much realistic right from the very beginning that the lack of opportunity, the lack of jobs, the lack of money, the lack of something to fill the void of their own everyday life, actually, would pave the way for the life of criminology, actually. That's why I think not only from materialistic point of view, all these prospects, as much as that one that had been inaugurated today by Mr. Fattah al-Sisi, actually, in Damietta, as a very much famous, city that was, threatened at one stage, at one early stage, actually, of development into extinction. But actually, the inauguration, the part of Mr. Fattah al-Sisi, actually, to take each several suitable chance on the part of all those artisans and all this craftsmanship, actually, would in somehow or another not only fill the void of the people, not only, secure suitable chances to earn their own early living and to be breadwinners, actually, but in the meantime, actually, will enhance, what you might call the capital income and the budget with the view of minimizing the source of the exports.
Yes.
And in the meantime, maximizing the imports, as our own dear professor colleague did mention a couple of minutes ago.
Yes. Well, Dr. Khalil, now, let's say the Egyptian economy will boom in 2018. What should the Egyptian citizen expect? Should we expect higher salaries? The basic salary would increase. Should we expect lower taxes? Should we expect better services, value for money, for what you pay? Should we expect the value of the Egyptian pound to rise against the American dollar? Because talking about inflation as well, they always say whatever goes up doesn't come down in prices.
Well, this is the problem, obviously, and that's why I'm saying what has gone up very high, and hopefully it won't go as high next year. So we would hope for stabilization of prices to start with. So hopefully if we can stabilize the prices, I don't think they're going to go down. It's hardly anything that goes up goes down, actually. So if we can stabilize the prices, would be a good start. I hope we don't keep asking for salary increases, because that will just keep putting more pressure on the economy for the time being. So I still think that we have to tighten the belt, still work a little more, work harder in production. Hopefully we can reduce the deficit, reduce the debt, and start stabilizing the economy for next year. If we are successful in stabilizing the economy next year, I think it'll be a good start. And we have to start pushing harder on production, as I mentioned. And to me, the most significant component today in what happened was the emphasis on productive enterprises. And obviously, we have quite a bit of interest in small and medium enterprises. And the central bank has allocated quite significant amount of money for entrepreneurs and young people to start their own projects. And that will help the employment issue that our professor was mentioning in here. And certainly, that will also give us a much more stable society.
Okay, so if we keep things stable, if prices don't go any higher, if basic salaries don't really increase, if we only just reduce the budget deficit, how's the Egyptian citizen going to feel this economic boom next year?
I think the anxiety about the continuing increase in prices and inflation is what making people nervous more than anything else. If people know that things are stable and they can adjust their own situations to a certain conditions, people now are worried, obviously, at the increased rate of inflation that's continuing, increased interest rate, which is happening, increased there's a lot of expectation of increase of fuel prices. So people are just have anxiety of the continuing increase. If they know that things are stable, things will quiet down, and we know we can stabilize the economy. Now we can start pushing towards production. And I hope, which is the other component that I would hope, is also we start pushing more for education.
Yes.
Improving the educational system, education and training system, the vocational training and the educational system, because with proper educational and training system reform, with proper production system reform, now Egyptian people can start feeling better. Now the prices, or at least the wages, can go up, and the Egyptian population will feel much better.
Yes. Well, Dr. Abdul-Halim, now, Dr. Karim mentioned that it's not the only way borrowing money and signing agreements and getting funds and loans from different countries or different financial institutions, but the production should increase, the productivity of the Egyptian market. Now, do you feel, or how would you assess the government's performance in encouraging the productivity in the Egyptian market? And because we've been talking a lot about attracting foreign investors, really strengthening the productivity of the Egyptian market, how do you assess the government's performance in this regard?
Well, I think the right way to be used and to be adapted in here, and these circumstances, rationalization. A large number of our own habits, of our own mannerisms, of our own habitual daily activities should be rationalized into the right direction to be taken, actually. A great deal of waste and a great deal of, wasting one's own fortunes and one's own money, actually, would seem to be, part and parcel of the daily life, on the part of the individual citizens in Egypt. I see no reason in any conceivable respect that, one of the, phenomena that would seem to be quite, repeating on a daily basis, youngsters and those young people actually leading, little dogs and very much expensive cats, and very much in the meantime expressing their own luxurious ways of life just by way of competing with other youngsters of their self-same age. So I think that something into the insights of our own daily habits, of our own manners, of our own, daily routine should be directed into the right path and the right way to be taken. And I think that, Mr. Fattah Sisi a couple of days ago did give his own, presidential orders for all the governors and for all, the governorates to try to make a sort of a seizure for those, flattened lands, for those lands that are to be taken actually by what you might call a sort of suppression or imposing their own powerful hands on them. That sort of seizure and that sort of, reproducing the distinctive authority and the powerful hands on those, tycoons and those millionaires and multimillionaires actually would seem in somehow or another reorganize and reshape the map of the road. A large number of vast territories and acres actually of kilometers of our own Egyptian land are to be taken at a certain time in a certain place without any sort of, regulations or regularities to be brought at some stage, I think, and I still think that immediately after the revolution of the 25th of January, a large number of people would, expand their own seizures on properties, on lands, on acres, and on, establishing and building those illegal establishments on lands that they are not theirs. And as such, this is one way of, being away from the regulations, of enforcing the law. That's why what had been taken of measures a couple of days ago is just one way of rationalizing the attitudes of those tycoons, of those superpowers actually, to be taken actually out of them and to be reused and reshaped and re-regulated actually in the right direction, in the right time, with the right man who would seem to be quite in a dire need, in a very bad need actually. Because the amalgam actually of the map of the road in Egypt is very much bizarre. It's very much, sometimes you find those people belonging to the upper middle class people, very much aristocratic, very much practicing aristocratic habits. And, those who seem to be quite demolished and very much impoverished. Those poor, young, attractive people who are lacking the suitable chances, actually, of finding suitable jobs in life. You cannot really find a sort of equilibrium between the upper middle class people in the society with an excessive way, exaggerated way of expressing luxurious aspects, and those who would seem to be quite behind the poverty line, actually. And I think in between should be stabilized.
Yes, well, there are definitely a lot of efforts exerted by the government, whether to encourage the productivity or enforce the law. And many developments, and it has been under the spotlight for some time now. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Khalil, the president of Nile University and founder of the Association of Management of Technology. I'd also like to thank Dr. محمد الحليم, the political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.